For people who maybe aren't familiar with the film, we will post a link to it in this article. But could you just summarize it and just tell people where they can see it? Yeah.
Sure. So All Riders is a documentary short on the battle for accessibility in the New York City subway, told by those fighting it. It was recently admitted as part of a PBS's POV Shorts program as part of their fifth season, which is one of like the big update.
Was there a particular incident or person that kind of was the catalyst for making All Riders?
Yes. So the catalyst was the death of Malaysia Goodson I think it was January 28th of 2019. And when Malaysia Goodson died, I sort of just had to know more about it. I spent 8 months researching, you know, the topic and meeting people and gaining their trust because, I'm not disabled. I was a 21-year-old college kid at the time. So it was a big process of, then eventually getting the trust of Malaysia's family, which was a whole other trip. But the catalyst for me was when Malaysia died. That was kind of like the thing that triggered me. It was like, wait, hold on. How is this remotely possible? And what are the, elements historically and, politically and all this jazz that led to this tragic moment, right? One thing that really intrigued me in the research was that the disabled community in New York is, the largest minority, right? There's almost 1 million New Yorkers with disabilities, and disabilities, it's a spectrum. It can be from someone with a cognitive disability. It can be someone that's blind or has, low vision. It could be someone in a wheelchair. It's a very wide spectrum, right? But the one thing that's really interesting is that it's one of the only communities, perhaps the only community, the only minority that you can opt into. Sasha was one of the characters. He's part of this group called the Elevator Action Group, at this part of this larger group called Rise and Resist. And then obviously there's Malaysia's family, because one thing that I really wanted to focus on this film was, I didn't want to make it a pity party, right? Like, oh, poor disabled people. Oh my God. It's like, no, it's like, disabled people are people, they're New Yorkers, they're, educated, they have lives like anyone else. But then when you look at, like, for example, stats like, upward, like 79% of disabled New Yorkers aged 16 to 79, I think it was, are jobless. Not because they're incompetent or because they don't have the skills, is because the environment of the city isn't accessible to them. So that was something that was really powerful for me. Was, hell, say you're going on a Tinder date, or say you're going on like a picnic, or say you're doing anything, you want to go to job, to school, all these things. New York City specifically, the lifeblood of the city is the subway. So what does that mean when, this basic, network, the veins of the city are not accessible to you? The movie is basically a story through these personal experiences and kind of painting a mosaic of a very broad issue. I mean, I should really make a feature, honestly, about the history of disability rights in the city. It's all boils down to the personal experiences of these people who are insane. They're nuts. They're nuts in like the best way possible. Like, they're, rain or shine, they've been fighting for, accessibility for decades. So it's like every civil rights movement, it's really a long process. And this film really seeks to, illustrate the struggle, ultimately the universality of it. That's what really struck me, because Malaysia Goodson was an able-bodied woman. She was carrying her baby in her stroller. She wasn't disabled. But that's the thing that really struck me, Alice, was like, you don't have to be disabled to care about this issue, because it affects everybody, right? From people, mothers with strollers, or people with disabilities. And the thing that's amazing about, accessibility is that, like, if you make a space accessible, you make it accessible for everyone, right? Say you work a 9 to 5, or you just want to take the elevator or the escalator, you don't want to go up flights of stairs. That's your right, as a New Yorker. Is again, the universality of it was really what struck me. Was like, if you make a space inclusive and accessible for a person on a wheelchair, or a person who needs braille, or whatever it may be, it benefits everyone. And that's what really drove me to really tell this story, was that, it's a story that all New Yorkers go through. So all these elements, were driving factors that made me want to tell this story through personal characters like Sasha, like the Goodsons, like, members of, the state assembly or the state senate, makers of change, basically. involved in the fight for accessibility.
Yeah. Are you in touch with any of those people now?
Yes. The thing that's crazy about this the activist group is that it's such a small, tight-knit group. There's an email chain of like the elevator action group with Sasha and with other members. So I'm always, seeing what they're up to. But yeah, I'm in touch with them all the time, and especially now that when I go to the city, I always meet with them for coffee or if, for a dinner or something, because now they're friends for life. That's the beauty of this project, is that like, Malaysia Goodson's mother is a close friend. I've met her daughter who was in a stroller, her cousin, all these people are like, all these subjects from the film, they're all my friends now. Like they're all deep friends, and we have this bond that, is, everlasting. The project resonated so much. And that's one thing that like I told, Malaysia's mom, was like convincing her. I still don't know how I did it, because we convinced her to visit the station where Malaysia died for the first time, which was insane. I know. And I remember I was walking out of therapy on 72nd on Central Park West on 72nd Street, and I called Jim Brown. I was like, Jim, how the hell am I going to do this? Like, how am I going to get this? She lived up in Connecticut. How am I going to? She's going to come down, take the Metro North, and I'm going to have. And he's like, Victor, and this is what Jim Brown is. I have so much respect for him, and he's like huge mentor. He's like, Victor, you're gonna have to kind of be an asshole. You're gonna have to direct her. You're gonna have to be a director, and obviously, gauge what you can and cannot do, but like go there, shot list it, and direct. And then she calls me the day before we're supposed to shoot, and he's like, Victor, let me put you on a conference call with Tamika, Malaysia's mom, because she doesn't want to do it anymore. And I get it. Why would anyone want to visit, right? And then I don't know, Alice, I don't remember what I said, but I think I said something like, Tamika, no one really gives a shit about your daughter. I'm sorry. Like, this is New York, everyone I said it, something because I was like, I said, listen, this is New York. Everyone gets their 15 minutes. She's just another story. It's New York, baby. Like, that's the way it is. And I said, listen, but every time I'm in the subway by myself with my camera, filming B-roll or doing something, and every time someone accosts me and says, what are you doing? It could be a tourist or it could be a New Yorker. And I tell them, oh, we're doing this film about this young lady who died. Every single one of them, without exception. Oh yeah, I remember that. It was shocking. And I told it, I was like, listen, every person remembers your daughter, but no one remembers her name. And that's why I'm doing this film. So yeah, what I said to her may have been a bit crass, but I was kind of like do or die. And I was like, it was the truth. It's like, listen, if we don't make this film, everyone's going to remember, someone was like choked to death in the subway like last week or something. New York, there's always something going on, right? And I told her, listen, Tamika, I'm not going to allow Malaysia Goodson's name to like fade into oblivion. And, I can't credit her enough. She was like, you know what? I'm going to go. And she went there to the station. And now, it was insane. So, I mean, when we were shooting, at the station, I mean, shit, like when we were at the bottom of the stairs and they were both sobbing and all the crew were trying to keep it together, what do we see coming down the stairs? A couple holding their baby stroller. You know what I mean? Like, that's the beauty of documentary. Like, I can't write that. Like, I get shivers when I think about it. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like,
I know if you wrote it, somebody would say, oh, did you stage that?
Yeah,
it's
but
like,
we didn't. That's why I love documentary filmmaking so much. And that's what really is so attractive about it for me, is that like, and as a young filmmaker as well, and I'm still trying to like develop my voice. We can't control life, we only hold up a mirror, and we can obviously have like the filter of the filmmaker, and we have to do our due diligence to like not break the trust established with the viewer, right? But I mean, it's just, that's the beauty of it, is like the most special moments you can't prep for. And I'm glad that we're able to capture some of those moments and shed light on an issue that is such a New York issue, because everyone rides the subway. Everyone likes talking shit about the infrastructure and all that, but not a lot of people understand what it means for people who actually depend on the subway to get to school, to get to work. And then when, a young mother dies, it's like, accessibility is a safety issue as well. The MTA settled a lawsuit with the disability. So there's a lot of lawsuits going on. There's one about elevator maintenance, and there was one about accessibility. And basically the MTA settled a lawsuit to basically, they're legally obligated to make the system 95% accessible by 2055. Always a pleasure to talk about all riders. And ramble on about accessibility. But, you know, yeah, it's great to like make money and stuff, and like that pays the bills, and like, you know, awards are great, but like having the friendship of like these activists and these, they're so badass, Alice. They're so tenacious, and they have to fight with an environment that's like not built for them, but like they're so insanely like, they're just amazing. Like their motivation is like, and to have their friendship, for me, that's like the best. Thank you again,
Okay.
Alice. Thank you so
right.
much. Have a lovely rest of your day, and even better end of your week.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.